Welcome, everyone, to the Red Raider Report. This week, Texas Tech gets a win over the Umass Minutemen, and Don, they probably look as impressive as they've looked so far on the young season, even though it was a football championship series team.
It was their most complete game to date. I don't think there's any question about that. You had the offense. Graham Harrell, I thought, probably had his, looked to me like, best game so far. Statistically not the best, but it looked like his accuracy was back. He was in a little bit more of a rhythm. The effectiveness of the running backs continued for, really they've been effective the entire season, but in a big way for the second week in a row. 301 yards between them 2 weeks ago, 284 yards between them last Saturday night. Then on the defensive side of the ball, second week in a row, you see the defense not give up a touchdown until late in the fourth quarter. Right. And so I think they came out of this one feeling pretty happy with the improvement that they made.
Right, and Adam, you talk about the defense, and especially, afterwards, I think both Coach Leach and Ruffin McNeil thanked their defense for not letting Liam Cohn show really how good of quarterback he is. They really made him struggle through that football game. They
did. Early on, I was pretty impressed with some of the balls Cohen was throwing. He had that one play for about 40 yards across the middle. He was good early. His completion percentage was good early on, but Texas Tech just got way too much pressure on him. Didn't really have time in the pocket. They couldn't get anything going on the run game. Right. One thing that jumped out at me, looking at Liam Cohen's comments after the game. He mentioned, we played Boston College last year. They were a real tough team up there in the rankings. He said this is a different breed down here. He said they were expecting that, but I think Texas Tech was really able to manhandle them, especially when you look at in the trenches. Tech's defensive line.
Yeah, and Don, on the offensive side, you kind of picked up in the post-game press conference. Shannon Woods had a good game, but you could tell it meant a lot to that young man.
I think he's one of those guys who maybe didn't realize totally how much football meant to him until it was taken away from him, because last year, clearly he was in the doghouse. He was not very productive during the first 2 months of the season, not nearly as much as he was the year before, and then of course, at really middle of conference play, he gets benched. The game after the 41-10 loss to Missouri, they jerk him out of there. Right. Insert Aaron Crawford for the last 4 games, and then Woods goes to the Gator Bowl, but then as a disciplinary measure, he gets in trouble again. They send him back home, and you could tell just being back as a focal point of the offense, being involved and being productive as he was Saturday night, 108 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns. He was giddy, and a guy who doesn't generally like to share much of his thoughts with the media, who generally declines most interviews. He was very happy and relaxed and comfortable in the post game.
Yeah, you could tell it meant a lot to him. At times it looked like he was almost choked up with he was kind of in awe of the experience he got to go through. And Adam, we've kind of been hard maybe, and I know Coach Leach has been hard on Graham Harrell at times, but if you look at the numbers after the game, and I don't think I realized it until I saw the stat line, 27 of 34, that is a pretty good day at the ballpark, and he's starting to live up to maybe the expectations that people had for him before the season.
He has. I think he's recovered from a couple, not really great games to start off the season. I think he's looked better the last couple. I think the offense in general has. But really, though, it stands out to me, Texas Tech, they're going to throw the ball. They're going to be successful in the passing game.
Right.
Graham Harrell's going to put up the numbers. They have to be able to run the ball, I think, to be able to compete at a championship level, both within the conference and nationally. And they're proving they can do that. Baron Batch and Shannon Woods have been great as receiving targets also. But I think, that really, if I'm a Texas Tech fan, I'm most impressed and most encouraged by what those running backs are doing back there. Because no matter how much you throw it around, no matter how good Graham Harrell is or Mike Crabtree is, you've got to be able to run the football in certain situations.
Yeah, if you don't have bounce, you're going to get in trouble. And I think KU is starting to see that problem right now. You have a great quarterback, but if you do not take pressure off them with a solid running game, Big 12 defenses are too talented. Their speed's going to get to you, and they're going to figure you out. And Don, I think the thing that really starting to stand out to me that was really impressive, you look at the wide receivers. They have so many weapons on this football team. 11 different people caught a pass against UMass. Coach Leach has got to be pretty happy with how that unit's progressing.
Well, he was, of course, 2 weeks ago he was not happy at all, because he saw a whole bunch of dropped passes. Last Saturday, they cut back on those. There were some instances there in which Swindle had a ball early on they didn't hold on to in the end zone. Then De'Tron Lewis had a chance where in the end zone, should have been a touchdown, just blatantly dropped it. And even there late in the first half, Crabtree gets behind everybody, and then of course he has a ball that hits him in the chest. He might have been able to hang on to it, but they a couple of defensive backs hammered him both right at the same time. The productivity though is you're right. Productivity I think is probably about where it should be at this point. Even though you don't have Crabtree having the just huge games that he had at this time last year. Remember. At the beginning last year, he had 17 touchdowns in the first 5 games.
Right.
That number isn't really up there, but maybe, like Adam said, might be a good sign. I mean, you have Crabtree, only 5 catches for 62 yards, I believe it was, on Saturday night, and yet offensively you still click and score 56 points.
And I think, you look at teams, even Smalls with covered him last week. I mean, Crabtree got a few catches. There was that big pass interference call that went Texas Tech's way. But, I think teams are going to keep Crabtree a lot more so on lockdown than they have in the past. They're going to focus a lot more attention to him. Now, Crabtree may bust out and have some games like last year, but I think for the most part, I don't know if you can expect as much production because teams aren't just going to let it happen. But you've got to make sure that the other players around him, the other receivers, Eric Morris, De'Tron Lewis, Tremaine Swindle, the running backs are going to beat you as well. Because I just don't see how it's possible for Crabtree to put up those numbers.
I think one thing that they do need to see as we get into conference play is Edward Britton hasn't been a real big factor here in the first month, and he wasn't necessarily last year either. And then around midseason, he really turned it on and had some big games. 7 catches and 116 yards down in Austin, and the only offensive touchdown up at Missouri got open for a 68-yard touchdown pass. Last 6 games last year, he had 4 touchdown catches. This year, I think they probably need for him to kind of turn it up again as they get into conference play.
Right, and Adam, our boy Don here, I think he kind of proclaimed in his column after Saturday's game that this is maybe finally the Texas Tech that people expected to see. I mean, what are your feelings on that? I mean, are they at a point to where they should feel pretty good with a week off and then going into Big 12 play?
Well, they have no reason to feel bad right now. They're 4-0. They haven't really been tested. That would be my only concern. I'm encouraged by the running game. I'm encouraged by the defense coming close to back-to-back shutouts. But you got to consider the opponents also. Really, I'm not so sure. I mean, I think the reason that Mike Leach was so critical of Graham Harrell and Mike Crabtree, and it was so critical of the second team this last time, he knows that they've got a long way to go. I believe they've got a long way to go. I mean, really, if you look at who Tech has played, they really haven't been tested. The Nevada game, you could say, okay, they had some adversity on the road. It was a fairly close game. They haven't seen nothing yet. I don't know. I mean, they've got to get off to a good start in Big 12 play at Kansas State. That's going to be a very tough game. I think it's going to be a close game either way. I'm not so sure. Texas Tech should feel good about what they've got going on, but they're by no means should be satisfied.
Well, it's going to be a key stretch because it doesn't matter who you play. If you're in the Big 12 Conference and you go play on the road, it's going to be a challenging game. Right. And now they're about to hit that stretch in which they open conference play, and by playing 3 of the first 4 on the road, just like Adam said, K-State, you feel like you should win that game. But when's the last time Tech has gone to Manhattan and played and had an easy time of it? And the answer is never. 4 years ago, it was a 35-25 game when Kansas State wasn't a real good football team. Then in 2000, it was a 28-23 game that Tech lost. And in 1996, it was a 21-14 game that Tech lost. I do think that they should handle Nebraska in Lubbock on October 11th. But then key stretch, you go to College Station October the 18th, and you go up to Lawrence to take on KU on October the 25th. And we've said before the Aggies are not a real good football team right now, but at the same time,
that's a rivalry game.
Exactly. At the same time, anytime Tech has gone to Kyle Field, you can say the same thing. The last time that Tech has gone to Kyle Field and won in a pretty convincing fashion, or by a lot of points, was 1984 when they won 30-12. Ever since then, they've won quite a few games down there, but they've all been close games. So who's to say? I wouldn't bet on a blowout, I guess, is what I'm getting at in that one. And then October 25th is a game that folks kind of I think, circled on their calendar early in the season. You're facing the team that won the Orange Bowl last year up at their place. So Tech's going to find out a lot about itself here in the next month for sure.
Right. And speaking of that next month, this week they get a off date. First time since 2004, as Coach Leach pointed out after the press conference. And we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to look at the rest of Texas Tech's season and where the Big 12 stands heading into conference play.